invite and share about a couple of things going on with APPA. Oh, and if you don't all know me, my name's Wendy. I'm APPA's Outreach and Communications Director. But as we're moving into this kind of end of the year and we're getting into the holiday season and we're thinking about great holiday gifts to give your friends and family, why not give them the gift of APPA, right? We have some really great current courses that are coming on. We have Carlton Terry's Birth Mask Reveal, and we actually had this first session last week. I got to be a part of it, and it was so interesting. He is such a great presenter for us. And we're continuing with another session this Thursday and the upcoming Thursdays as well. And if you haven't been, seeing any of our emails, the Birth Mask Reveal course is all about understanding how the story of our cranial and facial moldings caused by compression and drag forces during birth give us clues as to the physical and psycho-emotional story of someone's birth. And so it was really interesting for me. We talk a lot about, how certain pieces of the eye might tell a certain story about where baby was in the womb or coming out of the birth canal, and what that might mean for them as, human beings in this form. We're going to go ahead and put the link into that course in the chat, which is one thing that's really great about this course. And one thing that I really enjoyed being a spectator was that you get to really watch Carlton and learn from him, but all of the resources are in the course portal to go back and review. And I'm absolutely going to go back and rewatch a lot of the videos because there's just so much there. So it's absolutely worth joining us, even though you might have missed that first course. You still get to see all of these wonderful demos and have access to all of the courses. And as you bookmark that, I'm going to go ahead and drop another link into the chat, which is our memberships. And if you're not a member, add that to your Christmas list. We are going to be posting some emails and sharing some things about being able to actually gift a membership to someone. So if you've been enjoying your APPA membership and you want to give the gift of APPA to somebody else, you can do that. And as we kind of shift gears, why we're all here, I want to just kick off this last month of December as our Hispanic-Indigenous People series, which is hosted by APPA's very own digital design and programs, education programs assistant, Stephanie Duran. Stephanie is an El Pasoan native. She's the mother of 6 children ranging from 20 to 6. She says she's incredibly honored to educate and support BIPOC families nationwide through prenatal to postpartum as a full spectrum reproductive doula coach. She's a grief and pregnancy dialogue facilitator and a trauma coach. And she's actually the founder of Radical Rebel Midwife podcast blog, and she's the owner of Latinx Women's Health. And she's just an amazing, incredible support to her community and to APPA, and we're so lucky to have her. And I'm excited to turn over this series to her. Thanks.
Thank you, Wendy. So I am excited. This is our second year that we're doing this, so that's really exciting and thrilling, and I am happy that being able to connect with amazing people all over the world who are doing amazing things. So you guys are joining to the APPA Live, Exploring Birth Psychology. Today is December the 11th, and we have Danellia Arechiga, who is presenting my God, here comes my dyslexia, guys. Sorry, 1 second. A legacy of love, pregnancy. Pregnancy. Let me say it again. Let me breathe here. Getting nervous. The legacy of love, parenthood, and the art of I don't know why, guys. Today's really challenging. Intergenerational healing. So I apologize. So today, why we do this is because, we want to bring awareness and understanding, so we could all be connected and together as we are exploring each other, our different cultures, and bringing open hearts and ears. So with this way, we can understand each other and we could join forces versus seeing differences. And this is why I wanted to bring the Hispanic-Indigenous series to APPA so we could all learn from each other. And Danellia, she's just amazing in person. Like, if you start looking at her and following her, she just has like so much knowledge. And this is why she called herself multidimensional mama, because her journey started with being a doula. And then from there, she expanded to childbirth and being a single mom and full spectrum doula. And she understood that she started learning that her family just needed to have more of this conscious integration and medicine. And so instead of just focusing on doula and birth, she started teaching about so much because everything's interconnected. And so then she started talking about parenthood and trauma. And so this is why I feel like she's just so amazing and I love her work. And I'll be putting a link of her website so you could start following her and, you know, getting to know everything that she offers because she's just amazing. So I'm excited that she's here and that she allowed herself to be in this space with us. And so let's welcome our amazing speaker.
Hi, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you're tuning in from. I hope you can hear me okay. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for that beautiful introduction. And thank you to Wendy and Stephanie and the APPPAH team for having me today. My name is Danellia, and my pronouns are she, they. And I'm going to be sharing a little bit of my story and my intergenerational healing practices with you today. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pull up my presentation for you all to view with me. One second. So I named this workshop today, A Legacy of Love, because I think that there is so much emphasis on, you know, what we leave behind for generations to come, right? Whether that's family heirlooms, money, property, but how many of us can actually say that we are passing on a legacy of love, right? How many of us can truly say that we have inherited a legacy of love ourselves from our ancestors and our elders, right? I'm sure that many of us have experienced love in a variety of ways, but in this presentation today, I'm going to be talking about that in the form of parenting as an art form into intergenerational healing. And I'll talk more about what that means to me and encourage you all to tell me what it means to you. But first, I'm going to introduce myself a little bit more and so that we can get to know each other a little bit. I do want to just do a really quick housekeeping and just let you all know that this is a very informal conversation. So please do whatever you have to do to make sure that you are comfortable, whether that means, you know, grabbing a blanket and getting cozy, grabbing a cup of tea, having something to drink next to you. When we do talk about intergenerational healing, we do talk about intergenerational trauma, and that can activate our nervous systems and make us feel uncomfortable. So it's important that you have what you need today during this talk to feel comfortable, to feel safe. I also invite you to grab a piece of paper or a journal and a pen and write down anything that speaks to you, anything that you want to keep for later. We will have a Q&A at the end of this conversation. So if you have any burning questions, please write them down or write them in the chat. And our fabulous moderators today will collect those and we'll go through them at the end, okay? I can't see you all, so I'm going to keep talking. If you need to interrupt me, by all means, feel free. So my name is Danellia. I'm also known as Dane Real online. That is my artist name. And my community has also lovingly nicknamed me the multidimensional mommy because of the various forms of healing and art that I share with my community. And I am calling today from the land of the Tongva and Ahashiman peoples, also known now as Long Beach, California. And before we begin, I do want to just do a quick land acknowledgement and ask that I have permission to have this conversation on the land of the Tongva and Ahashiman peoples. As a visitor to this land, my ancestors are from Coahuila in Mexico. And so I would like to ask for permission from these ancestors and also call in my own ancestors to guide me and be with me today during this conversation. So I want to celebrate all of you that are here today. It really brings joy to my heart that so many of you have chosen to spend your time with me today talking about healing. Healing absolutely takes courage. And I want to celebrate those of you that are here and also those that watch the replay later. It takes a certain person to be interested in talking about healing, right? I personally have been on a healing path for about 10 years. That's when I realized I was suffering, I was in pain, I was dealing with a lot of inner turmoil. And I can tell you that it is painful. It sounds like this beautiful process that, we all hope it will be, but the truth is that it can be very painful, just like the anatomy and physiology of a wound, right? A physical cut. The tissues take time to regenerate new cells. The process of clotting and scabbing, and sometimes the scab doesn't always heal right away, right? Sometimes it gets chipped away at and it's raw again. And that's exactly what healing in this capacity feels like sometimes. Wounds that are constantly reopened, and memories, painful memories that maybe we've been trying to forget for a long time. But that's part of the process. And so that's why I want to take a moment to celebrate all of you for having the courage to sit in this conversation today, and even maybe possibly open your hearts to participating in some of the engaging activities I have planned for us today. Healing requires us to take a look at the parts of ourselves that we often hide away in hopes of never having to feel or remember, especially the emotions associated with moments when harm was caused, right? It feels a little scary now, but this is the most important work that any of us can do. And I'm here to help you. This is a picture of me with my mom when I was little. And I wrote here that I think this look on my face is very reflective of my experience as a child. I was a very fearful child. I was always nervous, always aware of everything happening around me. I was very emotional and never felt safe to express myself. And I've seen a bunch of other pictures of myself as a child, and I'm always very happy in pictures. You can tell I have like a fake smile because they told me to smile. But in reality, this is how I felt most of my childhood, like just very fearful, very scared. And I'll explain more about why. But through this process of healing, I have learned that I'm highly sensitive, and that that's not necessarily a bad thing. So I want to encourage those of you who may have similar experiences to be gentle with yourselves through this process today, and if you choose to take this work further. So I'm going to share a couple of terms that I'm going to be using a lot throughout this workshop. And I'm also going to take a moment to introduce you to some of my teachers. So first I'll start with my teachers. I talk a lot about inner child healing work throughout intergenerational healing. And the top picture is a picture of me when I was young. The middle picture is me, my daughter, Corey, my mom, Corrine, who I named my daughter after, and my grandma, Lucy. And my grandma, Lucy, was a single mother to 6 children in the 1950s. She bought a home in El Sereno, which is it's a community within LA County that's pretty much known for being a barrio, which is like a low-income neighborhood. And she bought her home there and raised her 6 children with very little help from their fathers. And my mom was actually the first born daughter. And so her role in the family was to be like the mother's helper. She was very much a part of my aunts and uncles' lives as a guide, as a teacher, as another parent. And as a result, she didn't really get to experience her own childhood because she was parentified at a very early age, about six years old. And so throughout this process of intergenerational healing, I've been working with my mom and my grandma before she passed in 2018, just really trying to understand their stories, what they went through, why they have trauma that has been passed down throughout generation to generation. And especially when I became a mother to my daughter, I was faced with that even more clearly, because every age my daughter reached, I was faced with my own trauma and my own set of needs that were not met during that age for myself, that I'm trying to guide my daughter through, So And so that's kind of how intergenerational healing works. Some people call it ancestral healing, or people talk a lot about like breaking cycles of trauma. To me, this is a practice of initiating or sustaining a family history of recovery to break intergenerational cycles of poverty, family separation, violence, abuse, and other types of trauma that are passed down from one generation to the next, right? And so this is the undoing, right, of these forms of trauma. The intergenerational trauma can be seen as the passing on of harmful behaviors, ideologies to generations in a lineage through repetitive and usually subconscious perpetuation. So that means that a lot of times these behaviors that are harmful or hurtful to either our children, to our communities, maybe to communities that do not look like us or whose cultures we do not know much about, these behaviors can be passed down. And usually it is subconscious. It's not like you tell your child, like, it's not like you grow up to say, like, I want to spank my children, but usually it's in these moments when the parents' needs are not being met that they resort to forms of violence to move forward in their children's lives. And so this really requires a lot of self-compassion. Self-compassion is being warm and understanding toward ourselves when we suffer, when we fail, or we feel inadequate, rather than ignoring our pain and flagellating ourselves with self-criticism. This can come in a variety of forms. Showing yourself self-compassion, it doesn't mean like not taking accountability for where we can cause harm, but it means not being so hard on ourselves and really trying to understand what it is that we need or we needed when we maybe acted out and caused harm to others. And a way that we can do this is by engaging with our inner child, understanding who our inner child is. Your inner child is you. It's who you've always been since you were born. But as we grow, we are influenced by our environments. We are influenced by different belief systems. We are influenced by societal expectations. And many of us lose access to our inner child, to what they thought, to what they felt, to their dreams, to their imagination. And so in this practice, it's imperative to connect with our inner children, as hard as it can be to remember them or to connect with them. It's important because that will be your guide. Because the people that we were as children, we were unfazed by the pressures of the world. We were in our joy. We were in our creative energy, right? Anything was possible then, until something happened to us that made us feel that that was not true, that was not possible. And so I like to think of the inner child as part of our subconscious that has been picking up messages way before it was able to fully process what was happening in your life, right? Whether it's mentally or emotionally. I like to think of the inner child as the version of us that we were before our environment, culture, and family influences us to be who they felt we should be. Connecting to our inner child can help guide us to areas of ourselves that have been harmed and that still require healing. And they can also help us guide our children. If anyone here is a parent or a caretaker or a leader or some type of role in which you are engaging with children and helping to raise them, tias, tios, aunts, uncles, grandparents, connecting to our inner child can allow us to express more empathy with our children, with the children in our lives. Elders are anyone of greater age, living and in spirit, who are of influence and sometimes often an authority in the family line. Many of us in the Latino, Latinx, Hispanic culture really value what our elders believe, and really want to make them proud and to have them approve of us, and that can be important, but part of this process is also learning what is best for you, because what worked for your elders doesn't always work for you now in the present time. And then our lineage is the lineal descent of an ancestor. So basically the line of which you are part of in your family. And it's important to look at that because of what we now know about intergenerational trauma and how it can be passed on, even through epigenetics, right? Even through the bloodline. It's really powerful, and it can really influence us in negative and also in positive ways when we choose to heal. So really quickly, a little bit about my story. I'm third generation Mexican American. I was born here, my mother was born here, and my grandmother was born here. My family originates in Torreon, Coahuila, Mexico, which is where my great grandmother Amelia migrated from around 1930. And as a result, my grandmother was born, and then my mother, and then I was born. And I was born to my mother and my father in 1989. My family experienced a great deal of domestic violence. What I would credit is just an absence of emotional intelligence, emotional maturity, just parents who didn't have tools and resources to process their emotions in a healthy way. And as a result, those emotions were often blown out of proportion, resulting in many ruptures in my household between my parents and sometimes between me and my parents. I was, like I said, I was a very emotional child. My parents did not like the way I expressed myself. I was very loud. I cried a lot. I would express myself. I would yell. I would hold my breath and just, grit my teeth until I would shake. And it was largely because I wasn't given a safe space to express my emotions, right? And I'm sure that's the case for a lot of people whose parents were triggered by emotional expression, right? My parents eventually divorced. It was the best thing that ever happened to my family. My mom was much more at ease when my dad wasn't around, and living as a single parent can be very difficult financially, and so we did live in and out of poverty for many years. We are part of a matriarchal family, so there are not a lot of men in my family. A lot of the men either couldn't, keep up with the demands of raising a family or supporting a family. There was a history of addiction and alcoholism in my family, and so that played a large role in why many of the men were not around. And so I just learned at a young age, like, I had to take care of myself. I have my mom, thankfully. She's a huge blessing in my life, and she's still here with us, and we work together. We now own a home in Long Beach where we live next door to each other. We have a duplex, and that was a great moment of healing for us, because living in and out of housing, like living in housing insecurity, buying a home and saying, okay, this is for us now. It's for us, that was a big moment to all of our ancestors who experienced, housing insecurity. When I was 21, I became pregnant with my daughter unexpectedly, and I found myself also going down the path of unpartnered parenthood, so single parenthood. I do not like to call it single parenthood because I am a big believer of community care and collective care. And so thankfully, I have a huge community of loving friends, family, clients, students even, who have been there for me time and time again, and who love my daughter and embrace us as family. And so I never really feel like I'm parenting alone, because I have this wonderful community to hold me and to learn from me, even through my experience. And I actually really enjoy being an unpartnered parent, because so much of my own upbringing was it was conflict surrounding how to parent, right? My parents were always fighting about who was right and who was wrong about how to handle the children, how to parent the children. I have two older siblings. My eldest sibling passed away in 2015. My brother Ronnie, he was 42 years old, and so now it's just me and my sister. And but you know, when we were kids, my parents fought a lot about how to parent us. And so when I became a parent, it reconnected me to my younger self. Like I said earlier, it forced me to look at my daughter and remember the parts of myself that were just like her, you know, innocent, pure, like just have so much wonder and creativity and imagination and hope, you know, and trust. And so it really put me into this path of intergenerational healing, of really looking at the way that I viewed even myself. Because I was not allowed to be my true self as a child, I started to loathe myself. I started to hate my own form of expression. I started to hate my own voice. I started to hate the way I looked. And seeing my daughter helped me realize I needed to heal those wounds. And so I really believe that to accept parenthood is to accept being faced with your past, present, and future at all times. And that can also be very triggering, right? When you see parts of yourself that you don't like in your child. But that's a call to heal. Being triggered is a message. It's a sign telling us that we have more areas that we need to put some focus and pour some love. And so so I vowed to be a nonviolent parent. I vowed that since I grew up in such a very scary and unstable family living environment, that I would try to raise my daughter in the most peaceful environment that I could. One where my emotions were regulated, one where I created safety for her to feel comfortable to talk to me and share with me, and for us to have a meaningful and loving relationship. And through this experience, I have cultivated a life of self-love, of liberation, and of remembering who I truly am at my core with the help of my inner child. So what I will share with you today is some tools that have helped me reach this place of equilibrium. And first, we have to identify our needs, right? So for me as a child, my needs were safety. I wanted to know that I would have safety in my home, that my parents were safe, that they were not hurting each other or themselves. I needed affection. I needed to know that it was okay to cry, and that it was okay to feel overwhelmed by the tension that I was living through at that time. I needed consistency. I wanted to know that my parents were always going to be there for me, that they, you know, wouldn't forget to pick me up at school or forget that it's my weekend to visit my dad. I needed honesty. I wanted the adults to tell me the truth. You know, I could always pick up on when they weren't telling me the truth and they were trying to, you know, fib to not have to be honest with me, but I could see right through it. And I wanted that so badly. And it was so frustrating to me as a child. I also wanted equity. I wanted what my parents told me to do. I wanted them to do it too, right? I was always calling out hypocrisy and saying like, Dad, why do you tell me to do this, but you don't do that? You know, and it would make them so mad. And I needed love. I needed love, like I'm sure many of us here, as a child. I needed love in all of the forms, words of affirmation, you know, touch, you know, affection, like cariño, as we say in Spanish, right? It's like just care, just that love, that affection that you need from your caretakers and loved ones. And so I'm going to invite you all to engage with your inner child now. So if you did grab a pen and paper, a journal, if you didn't, feel free to do that now. But I do want to take a few minutes for us to ask ourselves a few questions to see if we can connect with our inner children and see, what did they need? What did they need? And who was there to help them, right? And again, I want us to be very gentle with ourselves as we go through this process. So take a few minutes. You don't have to answer the question now if you don't feel called to, but I would suggest that everyone writes it down, writes the questions down, and reflects on them later if you can. Like I said, this is very deep work. It can sometimes feel a little overwhelming, but definitely give yourselves what you need today to answer these questions with care and with honesty, so that you can take this work even deeper. I'm gonna peek in really quickly. I see some of you writing. That's wonderful. Thank you for participating. So I'll read the questions for those of you who maybe can't write them down right now. I want to encourage you to ask yourself, what did I need as a child? What were your needs? They can be as simple as mine: safety, love, food, right? What if food was scarce and you were maybe you grew up in a big family and you were always having a fight over who got to eat, that can be a real need. Words of affirmation, maybe I know I still struggle with needing my mom to say, I'm proud of you. I need those words. So feel free to answer that here. What did you need as a child? It can be tangible, it can be emotional, it can be whatever comes to you. And then you can ask, who was there to help me when my needs weren't met? If anyone, right? Is there anyone outside of your home or outside of your family that could help you? I know for me, like my friends played a large role in my upbringing. My friends' parents even, were more affectionate and loving to me at times than my own parents. So who was there to help you when your needs weren't being met as a child? And if it's no one, that's okay. You can reflect on that as well. How were you there for yourself? Right? How did you get through those times? And then what are 3 ways that you meet your own needs today? And that's where this comes full circle, right? Is we're still trying to meet our own needs as adult children. So I'll give you a few minutes to write those down. There's a couple of other questions here on the right. They say, if you want to take it a little bit deeper, were my caregiver's basic needs met? So that's asking yourself, did your parents have their needs met? Your caregivers, whoever it was that was raising you, did they have access to food, housing, basic needs? Were they able to work? Were they disabled? Were they going through social issues like domestic violence or other things? Were there any barriers to resources that kept my caregivers from meeting my needs? Right? It's kind of piggybacking off that first question. And then asking ourselves, did our caregivers have access to tools for mental and emotional wellness? Many of them didn't, right? Because mental health is very stigmatized and looked down upon, meaning like people who struggle with mental health tend to be looked at in a negative light. And we know now that more people are struggling with mental health than are not. and it has a large part to do with the way that our society runs, the way that we all have to work, and we're not given the space and the time to meet our mental and emotional needs. So we have to ask ourselves, did our caregivers have that option? And if not, it most likely reflects why maybe our own needs weren't met as children in certain ways. And so this is some of that difficult and painful reflection that comes with this work, right? Because we have to face some of these answers that maybe we haven't wanted to talk about or to think about. But the reality is that most of our needs as children, we spend our life trying to meet as adults if they were not met, right? or if they were inconsistently met. And so it's important as we answer these questions to be gentle with ourselves, to be loving towards ourselves, and to know that the answers do not reflect our worth or our value as human beings. They are simply part of our story. And my hope towards the end of this is that everyone here will feel inspired to talk about this with someone, whether it's yourself through a voice journal, which is something I'll talk about later, or with a family member, a trusted loved one, a therapist, whoever you feel comfortable. But these are just some prompts to get us thinking about our inner child. Okay, I'm going to move on now. If you want to take a quick screenshot before I move on, you can do that now. All right, so that's one tool, that's one way that we can start this process of intergenerational healing. We can engage with our inner child, think about them, talk to them, journal to them, remember who they are. It helps if you have a picture. I'm currently staring at a picture of my younger self on a mirror that is behind my computer. And I keep that there at my desk because when I see her, I'm like, oh yeah, she was really creative. She's so energetic. She's so, just excited about life. And that's the kind of energy I want to pour into my work. And so I keep her there to remind me to have that energy when I'm doing my work. Another tool that can be used in this process is cultivating conscious communication, right? So being mindful of the words that we use, the way that we communicate with others and with ourselves. So this is super important because many of us operate by reciting a subconscious script that was inherited from the generation before. That means that a lot of our thoughts and ideas are not from our own mind. They are regurgitations of what we've been taught to believe, right? And this is why when, for example, when we're parenting and let's say our child does something that we would get in trouble for, we would be reprimanded for, we might blurt out the same words that our own caregivers said to us in the same way. We may turn into them without even knowing we're doing it, without meaning to, even if the vocabulary you're saying, I'll give you an example. Like when my daughter was little, we were struggling with her hair. I was combing her hair. No, it wasn't that. It was that we were looking for the brush. And I told her, like, it's over there in the cabinet, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, I can't find it. I can't find it. And I don't know why. Like, again, I committed to nonviolent parenting, right? To not threatening my child with violence, to get her to behave. But in that moment, the words, if I have to come over there and find it for you, I'm going to hit you with it, were about to come out of my mouth. Like I started to say it. And that's not something that's in my vocabulary. Those are not words I would ever say to her. But in that moment, we're in this similar place as I was as a child when I would do something like that, right? My parents would say, go do this. And then I'd be like, I can't, I don't know where it is. And they're like, it's over. They get frustrated because they don't want to do it and they want you to do it and figure it out. And then it was like the threat of, if I have to get up from what I'm doing and go do it for you, I'm going to hit you with it when I find it. That was a very common expression in our family. And so I was about to blurt those words out and I had to stop myself and say, oh my God, like I was about to say that. And I told my daughter, she was like 7 or 8. And I told her, like, I can't believe I was going to say that, but that's what I heard in a moment like this. And it's just like this very strange, like muscle memory occurrence that happens. And that's why this is so important, right? Cultivating conscious communication, because that was subconscious. That was something that's been so deeply ingrained in my psyche from seeing it for so many years and experiencing it myself for so many years that I almost did that to my own child. And so This means being intentional with the way we communicate with our children, with our elders, and our community at large. It means not just saying things because that's what people do, but being impeccable with your word, as Don Miguel Ruiz shares in his book, The Four Agreements, which I highly recommend for anyone wanting to look more into this. So here I just put a couple of expressions that I want you to take today that can help us with cultivating conscious communication. So Marshall Rosenberg, who's a big author on nonviolent communication, talks a lot about power with versus power over, right? So when we are approaching our children to solve a problem, how can we show power with them? How can we show them power by doing it with them rather than asserting power over, right? In the example I gave with finding the hairbrush, I could have gotten up, which is the hardest part as a parent when you're doing a million things, right? And your child, you're asking them for one thing to help you with, and they can't do it. But that's where the power comes. It's that sacrifice we make in a way to be uncomfortable, get out of our comfort, and go with them to show them where it is and how to find it, and show them love, right? Rather than power over, which is asserting my dominance over her simply because I'm an adult and she's a child, which is part of nonviolent parenting. It's not seeing our children as less than simply because they're young, but valuing them as teachers in their own right, right? At the beginning of this presentation, I showed you my teachers, and my daughter is one of them. She's one of my greatest teachers because she came to this world with her own wisdom that she has imparted on me as during our time together as mother and daughter, right? So that is where we find our power with. Also repairing after a rupture, right? So we know that these intergenerational relationships are not always going to be happy, fun, happy-go-lucky. There can be a lot of ruptures that occur between, for example, me and my mom, me and my daughter. My daughter and my mom don't have too many. Actually, they have a really great relationship, but the repair is so important because coming from a family of domestic violence, where not only did the violence happen, but nobody wanted to talk about it after. Nobody wanted to say, hey, that thing that just happened was really scary, wasn't it? How are you feeling? How can we make this better? How can we avoid this? And if it does happen, because ruptures happen, right? We're not always going to live peacefully with each other, but the repair is so important. The repair is where you address and hold ourselves accountable for where we caused harm, and where we address why we caused harm. Usually under anger is sadness, right? And usually sadness is caused by not having your needs met, not feeling valued as a human, not feeling included, not for a variety of reasons. But that's how we focus on repairing the rupture, is calling ourselves and our children in and saying, hey, mommy was about to say something really mean to you, and I'm really sorry. I did not mean to even go there. Like, I just had a really weird moment where I was remembering my own childhood and what my parents would have said if I did that. And I just want to let you know, I would never hit you with anything. I had a really tough time, in that moment. And that's how you repair, is through honesty and heart-centered language, right? That's the next one, is trying to prioritize the love at the center of your relationships and preserving that over all else, because the way that the world is set up, it's set up for us to turn on each other, and we need to stick together in order to move forward in this life with prioritizing our healing, right? And also here we have prioritizing honesty and authenticity, right? Forming bonds and relationships with our families and our communities that allow us to be honest and allow us safety to be our true selves without feeling judged, without feeling criticized. So that is how we cultivate conscious communication. Just some tips. I'm going to check the chat really quick. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay, I'm going to start wrapping up a little bit, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about our ancestors. I wrote here that getting to know our ancestors is a huge part of intergenerational healing. Even if they have passed on, we can still learn a great deal from them, especially the ones who kept traditions alive and encouraged us to do the same. I'll give you an example. My great grandmother Amelia was a seamstress. That's what she did when she came here to give herself a decent life when she came here from Mexico. And my grandma wasn't much of a seamstress, but my mom inherited my grandmother's sewing machine and taught herself how to sew so she could make herself these like cute 1970s outfits and tailor them to her specific measurements, right? Now me and my daughter love to sew, and we love to ask my mom to teach us new techniques. And this is a tradition that we've kept alive in our lineage because of this. And by sewing with the intention to connect, we honor our ancestors who lit the match on this family skill to be a trailblazer in our family. And it's come in handy because I have a child who's only 12 years old, but she's taller than me. She's very, very tall for her age. And so we may have to tailor her clothes to fit her, you know, and that's something that comes in handy for us. So it's a way for us to bond, to connect with our ancestors as well. And in this picture, this is my mom, me and my daughter, and we're holding a picture of my grandma when she was younger and my grandma Amelia, who's the seamstress I mentioned. And so just really quickly, here are some other ways you can honor your ancestors. You can create a family altar at home where you place their photos and make offerings regularly, offerings of fire, water, foods that they loved, music, playing music, singing with them, singing to them, meditating, and asking to commune with them, asking them to visit you and share any messages or wisdom with you that may be helpful in your life. So with that, if you want to take a quick screenshot of this, these are some affirmations for intergenerational healing. These are some things that you can say to yourself to help you on your journey. And I wanted to share this song. I don't think we'll have time to play it today, but if you go to YouTube or Spotify or wherever you listen to music, if you look up this song, Mother, it's a song that I wrote with my daughter, Corey, a couple of years ago. And it's about exactly what we're talking about today. It's about the lineage of our family, the maternal lineage, with what our ancestors had to go through and how we have changed it. And I highly recommend listening to it all the way through because the last part is very important. And you will hear the voices of my grandma Lucy, of me and my daughter. So I really appreciate you all being here today and listening and participating. I will also be providing a free ebook to anyone who signs up to receive it. Stephanie and Wendy are going to be sending a link out in the emails following this presentation, and the link will sign you up to receive my free ebook. And it goes deeper into what we talked about today. So I go into 3 clear-cut steps that you can do to start healing for your lineage today. And now I will go ahead and take some questions.
Okay, well, we do have a question here. Well, let me start. I'm going to start from the bottom up. Okay. So I saw Susan, and she says, does intergenerational healing expands to our time before birth, womb time?
Yes, thank you so much for that question, Susan. Absolutely. I think, when my brother passed away, my mom and I, we went to speak with a medium. And one of the things she told us was that when my mom was pregnant with my brother, he felt a lot of heat. And my mom later told us, like, yeah, she was experiencing domestic violence when she was pregnant with him, so of course her body was full of adrenaline, full of cortisol, full of all of those hormones that are spiked during times of stress, right? And so as a result, I mean, my brother, he passed away from a brain aneurysm, but his whole life he was tormented. He was just riddled with anxiety and depression, and just never really able to process it with anyone, never felt safe. He was also in the military, which I think had a lot to do with his trauma, because he experienced a lot there that he never told us about. But I think it does absolutely, if affect us during the womb and even before, because, we're finding research now that says that the eggs that we have in our womb, in our ovaries, are carried for generations. So like the eggs that our grandmothers carried, that is us, we've been there since before our mothers were born. So I absolutely think that the healing can also extend before, which means, and I love that you said womb time. Part of my work as a birth worker and a postpartum care practitioner is doing a lot of womb healing and helping folks who are getting ready to give birth heal their wombs and release any trauma or any tension or any stress that their wombs have been under, whether it's because of sexual violence to them or to someone else in their family, right? So yes, all of this absolutely extends to our time in the womb. Thank you for that question.
We do have another question here from Anika. I hope I'm saying her name correctly. And she's just like loving and being grateful that you're having this talk. It's super important to understand the connections in ourselves and with our children. But she would like to know if you have other tips on where to go learn more about inner work, please.
Yeah. So for inner child work, Latinx Parenting does great work around inner child healing. They have a lot of different workshops about inner child healing, about mother wound healing. There's so many parts of this, right? We just touched the surface today, looking at our inner child, looking at our elders, looking at our ancestors. But definitely check out Latinx Parenting, and they also have a link on their website that has a lot of books that are categorized. And I know all of this because I used to work with them. So I'm happy to share that resource with you all.
Yes. Well, I mean, this is oh, let me see. Do we have another question here? No, it was just more like tips for co-parenting with someone that doesn't believe in respect and patience and loving discipline.
Yes, that's a really tough one. I'll be honest, I don't have a lot of experience there, because when I started to notice that my values as a parent were not aligned with my child's father, I just separated myself right away and was like, okay, obviously we're not going to see eye to eye on this. And because I'm trying to avoid violence in my home and conflict and just, trying to live in a peaceful environment, I'd rather not be, associated. But I think just from my heart, what's coming to me is just trying to facilitate some, it's so hard. I was going to say some middle ground, but it's so hard. Like, how do you find middle ground with somebody who believes in, causing physical harm to your children when you're actively trying not to do that, right? Sending completely different messages. So I wish I had more for you, Judith, but I don't have any tips necessarily.
There's another question. What is some tools as parents we could use to help minimize or heal generational trauma within our children?
Definitely being aware of our own trauma, right? First, that's kind of where we started today. It was like, okay, checking in with your inner child. What is your own experience with generational trauma? And then learning your triggers. One of my triggers for a long time was like my daughter crying or whining. It's still a trigger, and I still have a hard time. But something now that I know like, okay, whining and crying is a trigger of mine because I was never allowed to do it myself. I will tell her like, look, I know you need to express yourself this way. Like, I need to step away because I'm hitting my limit of being able to listen to this for this long. So taking a break, stepping away, taking a moment to ground yourself, touching the earth, touching plants, connecting with nature, that can always ground us back into our true values, right? Which is like, okay, this child deserves to express themselves. I shouldn't be angry at her for expressing herself. But because of my own upbringing, it is hard. It is hard to not perpetuate those threats of like, if you don't stop crying, I'm gonna smack you or whatever. So like I said, Erin, just being more aware of your own wounds, your own triggers, and working through them bit by bit. This work is it's experiential, right? So you're only going to do more healing when you're faced with more conflict, because every time you're faced with a conflict or a rupture, you're given an opportunity to practice this, right? With more compassion, with more love, with more gentleness, with more patience. And so, like I said, just being aware of your own triggers will help you every time you're triggered again. And hopefully it'll feel like less intense every time. Thank you, Stephanie, for adding the Latinx parenting resource for Anne. And tool for that exact situation, but while driving, I struggle with their crying when I can't remove myself okay, yeah. So you're talking about like driving with a baby in the car seat in the back seat or something, right? And you can't like handle it. I totally understand. I've been there. And as a musician, I know like music helps me a lot. So even if the baby's crying, putting on some relaxing music, putting on some singing bowls, babies and dogs love vibration. So putting on something that's going to be soothing to the nervous system for you and for the baby and for the little one, right? And it's not like, la, 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 I'm not listening to you. I'm going to turn the volume up and ignore you. But it's like, hey, I know you're struggling. I'm struggling too. And this is what I need right now. So modeling self-care, modeling putting your oxygen mask on first when that baby is struggling, because you can't help that baby if you're not able to breathe yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So that would be my suggestion for that, Judith.
Yeah, this is really amazing. It brings a lot of things, like also reading books, I read a lot of books, like attachment behaviors. So like what Judith was saying about, the co-parenting, that's like so out of your control. And like there's different levels of safeness, like if it's extremely dangerous, well, obviously we don't want to co-parent. But if it's something that, because of the behavior, in one book I read is that, one parent is what a child needs, one parent sometimes, and it doesn't have to be 100% that we're like this amazing person. It could be just 30% of that work of being conscious and holding that space, if your child wants to explain what happened with other parents. And, like, it's just amazing. I love what you shared. I mean, I turned off my camera at one point because I was like crying and then writing. I was like, okay, let me breathe here. But it was really great because today I was not feeling the best. And I think that really helps. So thank you very much for that. And, as I was doing the series, we have one more speaker. And when I was trying to collect, different speakers to bring in this series, I was trying to make it like different of topics, but then they all somehow link together, like they're all similar to parenting and trauma and, our ancestors. And so I guess that's what this is supposed to be, a folded, because, it all starts with a womb. This is what APPPAH is all about. It's about, learning about ourselves and learning how to regulate ourselves so we can help to co-regulate our children. And then later, they could just, regulate themselves. So, next I want to share. Wendy, can I share the flyer? There you go. Okay, cool. Our next speaker is I know her, she's from El Paso, but she goes into Mexico and Florida, and her name is Lisa Piña. She's a midwife, and she does public health education, because I think she went to schooling for that, and her topic is how intergenerational trauma impacts pregnancy and birth in Native and Latin families. So that will be next Monday, and that will be our last talk for this month, because then the last one is like Christmas season. So we want you guys to enjoy that with yourself and your family, or with your community, whatever makes you feel happy, because sometimes, you know, holidays are not the best, but we always try to see what will help you to enjoy those moments, and what do you need for that time. But thank you very much for your talk. It was just amazing, and I'm going to allow everyone to, I think you already did that, Wendy, for everyone to unmute and say thank you and the love for Danellia.
Thank you so much.
Gracias.
Thank you so much. It's very good. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.